You're being misled, and I'm here to set the record straight. The recent National Association of Realtors settlement involving real estate agent commissions has been blown up by the media, labeled with such headlines like sellers will pay less commission and buyers strapped for cash are being priced out of the market. Well, that's not all entirely true, and I'm here to present the actual facts along with my opinion on the impacts for those here in North Carolina, so you can see how this proposal may affect you as a buyer and a seller. I'm Alison Wojnarowski with the W Real Estate Group here in Raleigh, North Carolina. While I have extensive knowledge on the subject, I am not an expert, nor am I offering legal advice. So take this information as my understanding and opinion based on what is known today. All right, let's get right into it and start with level setting ourselves with how real estate transactions are done here today. When a seller engages a real estate agent to sell their home, the commission has always been negotiable. The commission is paid from the seller proceeds to the listing brokerage at the time of the house closing. While the commission is paid from the seller's proceeds to the listing brokerage typically agrees to split the commission with a cooperating broker that assists with the sale on the buyer side of the transaction. Roughly half of this commission is paid by the listing firm to the buyer's agent at the time of closing, and another portion is used to reimburse the listing firm for marketing costs, photography, open house costs, and more. In MLS, the database where all the homes are listed for sale for agents to see, the listing firm lists the amount of commission that will be paid out to the buyer's agent in a dedicated field. On the buyer's side, North Carolina requires that all buyer's agents have a signed agreement with their buyer prior to submitting an offer to purchase on a home. This contract stipulates the fee owed to the buyer's agent from the buyers themselves if the seller and/or the listing agent choose not to offer commission for the buyer's agent. Now, this is incredibly rare in North Carolina, and buyers rarely ever end up paying any money out of their own pocket for buyer's agent services. But is this actually true? Home values are actually calculated such that the commission fees are built into the overall value. So when someone lists their house at fair market price, technically the true value of their house is slightly less when accounting for commission fees. So in actuality, buyers have indirectly been paying commission fees since the dawn of real estate agents. It's just been baked into the listing price. But what this current system has done is minimize the amount of money buyers have had to bring to the table. And while many forget, the sellers already have these costs included in their home value. So what is this National Association of Realtors settlement, and what does it mean for the average buyer and seller in North Carolina? At a high level, the lawsuit claimed that the National Association of Realtors required sellers to pay a buyer's agent, and the sellers were not aware that they were paying the fees for the buyer's representation from the proceeds. In reality, buyers and sellers have always been able to negotiate these fees, and sellers were never obligated to pay buyer's agents. The settlement in this case ultimately serves to make it more transparent that sellers do not have to pay buyer's agents and that fees are always negotiable. Do note that this settlement has not been approved by the Department of Justice yet, but if it is, the changes are to go into effect in July of 2024. Here are the high-level details of the settlement. Buyers must enter into a written agreement with a buyer's agent before seeing a property, and that agreement must list out how much the buyer has agreed to compensate the buyer's agent for their services throughout the home buying process. Sellers must also enter into a written agreement with the listing agent that details out their commission. And in lieu of offering buyer's agent commission, it must be agreed to the amount of buyer concessions, if any, that the seller is willing to pay. Those concessions can be applied to the buyer's agent commission at closing. Listing firms will not have dedicated fields in the MLS system to share what the buyer's agent commission will be, but will be allowed to provide buyer concession amounts in the public remarks field. Additionally, listing firms can offer buyer agent compensation off MLS through their own communication methods. So in essence, things haven't really changed. They are just being made more convoluted. In North Carolina, we are fortunate in that we are one of the few states that already had buyer agency agreements in place. So this settlement affects us much less than other states. Let's step through the realistic impacts here in a little bit more detail. Buyers entering into written agreements called buyer's agency agreements is nothing new in North Carolina, but the difference now is that the buyers must have them signed before any properties are shown, and buyers will be more mindful of their fees. For those relying on Zillow and Realtor.com agents to quickly show you a house you found on the internet, you now have more red tape to jump through as a buyer, but I highly recommend against doing that anyways, as you're just rolling the dice with those agents. Compensation-wise, the buyer could always negotiate the fee for a buyer's agent services, but now it could be more prevalent. I believe you will see some agents experimenting with different models involving different levels of services, flat fees, and more. But overall, the fees will generally be what they are today. Remember, you get what you pay for, and this will drive the good agents to be more successful, with many subpar agents leaving the industry as buyers will demand strong services. There also may be buyers who choose not to use a buyer's agent to avoid paying fees. That's a major risk to take for the majority of people making the largest purchase of their life. Real estate transactions and negotiations are complicated, and having an experienced real estate agent on your side will get you the best deal, unlock off-market opportunities, and reduce your risk overall. But buyers, don't worry too much, as this next part should ease your concerns about having to come up with more cash to close or being forced to not use an agent. For sellers, the listing firm and the seller will enter into a written agreement as normal, but there is a chance the listing fees will be less. However, that doesn't mean the vast majority of home sellers will suddenly pay less. As it stands today, nearly 90% of all home buyers use a real estate agent, with a large portion of the remaining 10% involving family and friend transactions. Most buyers are simply not going to be able to afford paying a real estate agent with cash on hand, and thus the likely standard will involve seller-paid concessions to the buyers to cover the buyer's contractual obligation to the buyer's agent. This will create a very similar bottom line for the seller as they see today. So as a seller, this is something that you and your listing firm will discuss as far as your willingness to pay. If a seller chooses not to provide any buyer concessions, which has always been optional by the way, it is very likely their house will sit on the market longer and receive a lower offer, as buyers will be less incentivized to consider your house giving the larger out-of-pocket commitment. Instead, it would be expected for the sales price to be lower as well, since you're not paying a buyer's concession. The most likely situation for sellers who choose not to offer these concessions is the offer that they receive will have in it the request for the seller to cover a certain amount of the buyer's closing costs that will now include the amount they agreed to with the buyer's agent. This is obviously part of the negotiation, as the seller can counter or refuse, but it will be another facet to real estate transactions. And lastly, let's talk about advertising these seller concessions to the buyer. In all honesty, there's not a ton of change here, as while the specific buyer's agent commission fields in MLS will go away, the listing firm can still list what the seller is willing to pay in the public comments field. Also, listing firms can advertise any buyer paid commissions on a listing on their own platforms, such as via emails, newsletters, websites, social media, and more. So while what you're advertising is a little different overall, you won't have to offer on a house without knowing whether or not the seller will help pay for those buyer agent fees. So overall, my thoughts here are that this settlement will really not change much for us here in North Carolina. There will be some new concepts tried from buyer's agents, and it may take a little time to settle into what the new norms look like commission-wise. But overall, I would still expect sellers to pay the vast majority of buyer's agent fees. Just the how it gets paid will be structured differently. I'll leave you with some advice. Buyers, be selective on your real estate agent. It will be important to have an experienced agent at your side who offers you both convenience and significant value. Don't just choose the first Zillow agent who pops up on your search, as you'll pay for it later. Sellers, while the media has billed this settlement as a way to pay less, you will ultimately be looking at similar bottom line as you were previously, whether you pay concessions or you lower the price. Your home selling experience will go much better if you advertise the inclusion of concessions to the buyer. Also, be selective on your real estate agent. It'll be important that they have a great network of agents and, most important, a large audience to advertise to. Here at the W Real Estate Group, we're uniquely positioned for this change given our extensive social media presence and resources with Relocating to Raleigh. We are the only team in the Triangle that has any measurable and active social media presence, which for sellers has proven to allow us to get your property in front of tens of thousands of more eyes than anyone else. And for buyers, we have the greatest collection of resources offered in the area with extensive regional knowledge that puts us in the best position to match you with the perfect location for your needs. I hope this video was helpful for you to understand the high-level implications of this settlement. Please reach out if you need any real estate assistance, as we would love to help you. I'm Alison Wojnarowski, and thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video.